intelligence takes place, intelligence takes birth. O virtuous lady, the functions of intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view and to help the senses. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Intelligence is the discriminating power to understand an object, and it helps the senses make choices. Therefore, intelligence is supposed to be the master of the senses. The perfection of intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. By the proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness is expanded, and the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Text number 30. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. As described in the Patanjali Yoga system, Pramana Viparyaya Vikalpa Nidra Smritaya. By intelligence only, one can understand things as they are. By intelligence only, one can understand whether or not he is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubts. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification with the body is detected. This is viparyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described here as nishchaya, or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body, but spirit soul. Smriti means memory, and svapa means sleep. Sleep is also necessary to keep the intelligence in working order. If there is no sleep, the brain cannot work nicely. In Bhagavad Gita, it is especially mentioned that persons who regulate eating, sleeping, and other necessities of the body in the proper proportion become very successful in the yoga process. These are some of the aspects of the analytical study of intelligence as described in both the Patanjali Yoga system and the Sankhya philosophy system of Kapila Deva in Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna Jai. All voices.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Okay, so and on one hand, it says doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. But then it says blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning, but doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. Yeah, so this doubting has to be controlled. If you hear bona fide knowledge, there's no reason to doubt it. But if you hear something that is not bona fide, then it's proper to doubt it and to see how to correct it. So there's something called doubting Thomas. So Thomas was a disciple of Jesus. So after Jesus was crucified on the cross, he and also one of the soldiers put a spear into his wound that he had to make sure he was dead. And then he was thrown into a cave, and they covered the cave with a big rock. Well, after a very short time, the rock was taken away or pushed out, and Jesus was not in the cave. And this was a big shock to the people that had put him in the cave because they thought he was dead. And then they saw Jesus walking around for about 40 days. And then eventually he went back to be with his father, Krishna. So these were supernatural, what you would say, pastimes of Jesus. And it bewildered many people because they were sure that Jesus died on the cross. And ostensibly he did. And now he was still alive. And for about 40 days, he walked around talking and preaching to his disciples. And there was one disciple who was called Doubting Thomas. So Thomas wanted to have actual proof that this person that was walking around was Jesus. So everybody knew that Jesus had was more or less killed by the spear of one of the Herod's soldiers. And so one person who's called Doubting Thomas, he wanted to put his finger into the wound of Jesus to make sure it was actually Jesus who was walking around and not some imposter. So he actually put his finger into the into the wound. Well, I'm sorry, into the wound, and he realized that this was actually a fact. It was actually Jesus. So his name is Doubting Thomas. He wanted to have absolute proof that this was Jesus. Okay, so here it says doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning, but doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. Okay, so this word samsaya means doubt, and viparyasa means misapprehension. In other words, not seeing correctly or properly. And nishchaya means correct seeing or apprehension. Okay, so doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. So basically, this verse, Canto 3, chapter 26, text 30, is explaining the necessity for a regulated life. Regulated life, meaning waking up at a certain time and going to sleep at a certain time and being regulated in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is very necessary for a person to have what's called correct apprehension and good memory. So you have to sleep and you have to wake up at the right time. So everything has to be regulated in order to have good intelligence. And one aspect of intelligence is doubt. It's an important function of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. Samsaya means doubt. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. Okay, so this is a major subject. There is, let's say, bona fide doubting, and there is unbona fide doubting. The words of bona fide devotees should never be doubted. The words of speculators should always be doubted. So we have to understand who is speaking bona fide things and who is speaking speculative things. That's not difficult if one is educated. But if one is not educated, so one who knows nothing will accept anything. That's a proverb that I made up. One who knows nothing will accept anything, because a person who knows nothing has no way of discriminating between what's the truth and what's not the truth. But when one is educated properly in Krishna consciousness, they can quickly understand what is the truth and what is not the truth. And that's very important if you want to have a successful life of Krishna consciousness. You have to be able to see if something is nonsense. So many times there are cheaters who pretend to be something that they are not, in order to take advantage of other people and trick them into giving them money or giving them some, let's say, ability to basically put the fox in the chicken coop. Look that up. The fox in the chicken coop. It's the story of Aesop.
Aesop fables.
Yeah. There was a fox that I think he fell into a pot of coloring and he became blue. So no one had ever seen a blue fox before. So for a certain time, they accepted the fox as a incarnation of God. They, meaning the other animals. Uh, but then one night, other foxes in the neighborhood started to howl, and when the blue fox heard them howling, he, being a fox, also started to howl. And all of a sudden, everybody realized, wait a minute, this is not God. This because they were treating him as God. They had never seen a blue fox before, because the fox fell into a pot of coloring. And then they realized it's not God, it's a fox. And they chased him away right away. But for a certain period of time, they considered it was God because they had never seen a blue fox. What does it say?
Hmm. I don't know whether it's the exact. I'm not finding with that one. Fox from the chicken. So I think the one that you're talking about, the blue jackal.
Okay, yeah. The jackal is a type of fox, but go
Yeah.
ahead. Yes.
So the jackal falls into
Pot of
vat
color.
of a blue dye while fleeing from a pack of dogs. When he emerges, his unusual blue color makes him look extraordinary and frightens other animals in the jungle. Seizing the opportunity, the jackal proclaims himself to be the special creature sent by the gods to rule over the animals. The animals believe him and treat him as their king. However, the jackal's deception doesn't last. One night, he hears other jackals howling and then instinctively joins in. The animals realize that he's just a jackal and then,
And chase them away.
yeah, chase him away.
Yes.
That's one story.
So there are people like that too. They sort of infiltrate a group of people and pretend to be something that they're not, and convince the people that they're bona fide. And after the person, robs everyone and runs away, they realize that they were fooled. They made a mistake. They didn't understand who this person really was. This person that was impersonating himself as being someone else. So these are Aesop's fables. The fox that falls in a vat of coloring, and then when he comes out, although he has the body of the fox, but he doesn't look like a fox because he has a different color. And the other animals accept him as God. But one day there was a group of foxes that were in the neighborhood, and they started howling at night, as foxes do. And the king, who was being treated, with all respect, he started howling because he's an ordinary fox. And immediately everybody realized, wait a minute, this is not God, this is a fox, like any other fox. And they chased him away. So there are many people that create a certain persona to trick other people and take advantage of their money or take advantage of them in one way or another. Like one time, there was a person who claimed to be a devotee, and he might have been associating with devotees. So he came to Seattle, and nobody knew who he was. And he started talking about, how he's a devotee, and he wants to purchase a nice temple for the devotees in Seattle. So a lot of the devotees became convinced that he was a bona fide devotee. And they asked me to help him find a suitable new building for a temple. So I was asked to drive him around to find a suitable building that he would purchase because he claimed to be very rich and he wanted to help the devotees get a new temple. So I spent 1 week with him, driving him here, there, everywhere. And then he would talk to me a lot as we would, I'd be with him for a certain period of time every day, looking for this imaginary temple that he wanted to purchase. And he claimed to be very rich and so forth. But after a little time, being with him, he began speaking in very strange ways about, oh, there are devotees in some other place who have become very rich very quickly.
Hmm.
So when he said that to me, I said, really? He said, yeah, and you can also become rich like them. So as soon as he said that, instead of being something I was interested in hearing, I became suspicious of him. I said, why, I was thinking to myself, why is he talking like this? And it turned out that he was a fake person, that he would go to different temples and different places in Europe and the United States and claim that he was very rich and he wanted to buy a temple or build a temple or buy a temple for the devotees. And the devotees would believe it. And then, when this happened and where I was asked to help find him a building to purchase for a new temple. So I was, asked to drive him around so he could find a suitable building to purchase. So obviously, I was with him for about almost a week, driving him around different places, but because I was with him all the time, he started talking a lot with me. And he started saying things that, I've been in other places and the devotees, I've helped them become very, very rich. So I said, oh, well, that's pretty good. And then he kept talking and talking, we were together for about 4 or 5 days. In the end, it turned out that he was trying to groom me to be a mule, M-U-L-E. What is a mule? Well, mule is a donkey, right? But there's also people who get marijuana or some kind of drug and bring it into the United States illegally. They're also called mules. So this is what he would do. He would go to different temples, promise them that he was going to, buy a new temple for them, but he needed to find a suitable building, and the devotees would believe him. But his real purpose was to convince a devotee to become a mule, meaning someone who would smuggle, drugs into the United States. So he was looking for, innocent devotees.
So he never bought anybody any temple.
No, not at all.
But then somebody recommended him to here, means like somebody else is already complicit.
Well, no, this guy was he looked like a devotee, he talked like a devotee. He might even have been a devotee, but he was completely corrupted. And his real purpose was It's just like there's a man who does not want to be caught smoking. So what does he do? He asks another man to hold the cigarette in his hand so he can take a puff from it, but not get his hand, let's say, stained by the cigarette, or have his hand smell like the cigarette. That's what this guy was doing. He was trying to trick innocent devotees to become mules. A mule it's not only a donkey, but it's a person who can smuggle things in from one place to another. And so he was trying to groom devotees to smuggle drugs. And he would say, look, you only have to go from this place to that place and you'll make $10,000. So it sounded pretty simple, right? But it wasn't that simple because you had to get through immigration and, you could easily get caught with the drugs when you're trying to get into a country. So that's like the man who asks someone else to hold a cigarette so that he can take a puff of it without getting his hand, dirtied by the cigarette. So the same way, this was a so-called devotee who wanted to convince other devotees to move marijuana from outside of the United States to the inside of the United States. And he promised them a lot of money. And there were some devotees that actually accepted to do it, and they got caught. And when they got caught, obviously they were interrogated by the police. And one of the devotees said, well, my temple president told me to do this. So, the police were like surprised that your temple president asked you to be a marijuana mule. And he said, yes. So eventually, the devotees that convinced him to be an idiot and take marijuana from one place to another, they eventually were investigated by the narcotics division, and they got caught. There was also a murder that was involved in that whole episode. It was completely devastating to the let's say reputation of the devotees. But some people get tricked, and they don't have a good ability to discriminate, understand if someone is genuine or someone is a cheater. So this one person who acted like a devotee was able to cheat devotees to become mules, taking marijuana from one place to another. Okay. So, are there any questions? So we are on, we're talking about verse 30, right?
30,
yeah. So let's take a look at this.
31.
No, let's stay on verse 30 for a minute. So the verse says, doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, but said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. And the purport says, doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from a proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. As described in the Patanjali Yoga system, pramana viparya. The pramana means the truth. Okay, so, pramana viparya vikalpa nidra smritaya. By intelligence only, one can understand things as they are. By intelligence only can one understand whether or not he is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubt. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification with the body is detected. This is viparyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described here as nischaya, or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body, but spirit, soul. Okay, that very profound purport. Many people get convinced by false knowledge, and it causes havoc in their life. Like, for example, some Muslims are able to convince a young boy, it could be a young man, to tie explosives on their body and cover it with clothing, walk into some place and ignite it, blow himself up and kill some people. Now you can understand how these so-called Muslim persons can convince a young boy to strap bombs on his body and go into a place where there are a lot of people and ignite the bomb and kill them, and at the same time kill himself. Now you can see that some of these Muslim so-called men who are able to groom young people to strap a bomb on their body and go into a public place and ignite it and kill people. That means that they're able to condition people with their fake philosophy and convince them that it's the right thing to do. That is very dangerous. But it happens a lot, or it used to happen a lot. I don't know if they're still doing it as a means of creating havoc in a certain place. But at one time, it was happening a lot, where young men were convinced to strap bombs around on their body and walk into a place and ignite them and kill not only himself, but other people. So this type of, let's say, conditioning is demoniac because it's conditioning a person to commit suicide for some type of philosophy and to make a statement that scares people, terrorizes people, and by which eventually they can take over a country. The whole purpose of spiritual life is to go back to Godhead, but you don't go back to Godhead by strapping a bomb on your body and then exploding it and killing other people. However, the Muslims are able to convince a young boy or young man that if they do that, they will get 70 virgins in the Jannah.
Mhm.
70, not one, 70. But to their horror, instead of 70 virgins, they get 70 homosexuals. No, I'm just joking. So you can see how good these Muslim fanatics are at convincing people to do something. They know how to groom people to be convinced that they'll go to the spiritual world, so-called spiritual world, by committing suicide and killing other people. That means they're really expert at fooling people, you know. And of course, the people that are grooming the young men to become martyrs, not martyrs, they are actually criminals, to kill themselves and kill others. You can see how convincing they are.
One point, Guru Maharaj, talking about not at this level, but in our village also, like we are trying to distribute the Gita. They are thinking they were trained to. They actually, some of them follow the Gita,
Yeah.
and the way they were trained is not everything was written by Vedas.
Oh,
So they're
no.
doubting our books, not written by Vedas. They are convinced that way.
What was the name of the person that they thought was the real author of the Vedas? They had the name of some guy,
They're convinced something else.
Badanara and something like
something, yeah.
that. Basically, there is a debate about whether he is Vedavyas or
See,
is there a different.
the way you control people is to put a doubt in your mind. Now, it does say here, doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. But then it says, blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the word says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction.
And Maharaj is, everybody says that there is a proper source.
Well, yeah, but you have to test it.
Only by experience and see if it's working for.
Well, I mean, look, if someone claims to be, let's say a guru or a devotee, but they have bad habits, and they're not really what they're saying they are. So that's one way to understand. Another way is if you find out if the person has been lying to you. That's another way. So you have to test people. There could be a litmus test. Look that up. Litmus test. LITMUS. Litmus test. See, they have all these words in English language to explain things.
Yeah,
With
it's a figurative term used to describe a single decisive factor or a standard that determines the outcome of a decision, opinion, or judgment.
Right. Second definition.
Mm. The term originates from the scientific process of using litmus paper, which changes color to indicate the acidity or alkalinity of the solution. Over time, it evolved into a metaphor for any test that categorically establishes a result.
Establishes what?
A result.
I didn't understand.
Anything over time, it evolved into a metaphor that for any test that categorically establishes a result. Like,
Yeah, okay. I
yeah,
understand that. I didn't understand what you said though before.
what did I say? The term originates from the scientific process of using litmus paper, which changes color to indicate the acidity or alkalinity of the solution. So
Right.
that's where they were using the litmus paper.
Right.
So that's how over time that same thing has been used to say, okay, do we have a litmus test to establish any result, basically?
Any other one?
Any result of any situation.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in politics, often used to describe a key issue or stance that determines whether a politician or policy is acceptable to a group. For example, views on abortion or climate change might serve as a litmus test for voter support. Social and ethical standards. In ethical discussions, a litmus test might involve a person's stance on core principles like equality or justice to evaluate their broader worldview. Similarly, next, business and leadership. Companies might use a litmus test in hiring to determine cultural fit or shared values.
Okay. That makes sense. So a litmus test is a test to see whether a person is what they say they are, or whether this person has the same, let's say, general philosophy of life as the people that are interrogating. So sometimes you have imposters that enter a group. Like, for example, it's very easy for someone to enter the Hare Krishna movement, right? We get so excited when there's a new devotion. So whenever someone would come to the temple, this person at a temple, and they would say, I want to join your movement. I said, okay. I'm very happy you want to do that. And I said, but I have to ask you 2 questions first. So then I would talk to that person and ask a whole bunch of questions. Where have you ever been in the Hare Krishna temple? They say yes. I would say, which temple? And he'd say this temple or that temple. And then I would call up that temple and give the name of the person and say, do you know this person? Sometimes they would say yes. Yeah, we had to throw him out of the temple. He was a thief. And when there is a person like that, was even sometimes the devotees will communicate with all the temples and saying, if this person comes to your temple, he's a thief. Don't believe whatever he says. But sometimes, they don't have that information. So therefore, you have to interrogate the person, or you have to vet the person to make sure he's not a thief or a criminal or whatever, because they want to stay in the temple and they'll get free food and a place to stay, right? So whenever people, I don't know, as temple president, whenever people would come and ask if they could stay in the temple, they want to be a devotee, I would say, well, you can become a devotee, but you can't stay in the temple. They said, well, why not? I said, well, you have to pass a test. And they said, what's the test? I said, and I would say, well, you can't stay in the temple, but you can come every day to the temple, have prasadam, and do service, and prove that you're serious. But they would usually get angry. I would say that there was this one person named Pritu Prabhu. He's a very good, and he's German. So he came to France and he wanted to enter the temple. I wouldn't let him. He was not a devotee at that time, but he wanted to join ISKCON. So at first I said, no, you can't. You can't sleep in the temple, but you can come every day to the temple and do service. He got really upset, but then he had no choice. So eventually, because he kept coming and doing service, I let him into the temple, and he became a very, very prominent devotee. But he never forgets. Whenever he sees me there, he always remembers. I wouldn't let him into the temple when he first came. But why should I? We don't know who the person is. Why should we let him come into the temple right away? You have to give him a test to come regularly to the temple and do service, and that way we can understand who he is and find out, where he came from, and get some references about this person. One time, this one man came to the temple and he said, I want to be a devotee. I want to stay in the temple. I said, oh, that's wonderful. I said, let me ask you a few questions. I said, what did you do in the last 10 years? He said, well, I was in jail. Oh, I said, really? What were you in jail for? I said, I killed somebody. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, so I don't think you can stay in the temple. But at least he was honest, right? He killed someone somehow, and then he got out of jail. Probably in jail for 10 years, and I don't know, maybe he had a good lawyer or something. But I said, you can't stay in the temple, because if he killed someone and got away with it, that means he's potentially able of killing someone else. So why should I let that person in the temple? Because if he gets in the temple, now he can sleep in a brahmachari ashram. Now he's putting a person like that in the temple, sleeping next to all these good devotees. It's a type of abuse. So you have to vet a person very carefully. You just can't let the person in the temple for the first time that they come. You have to ask them, have you ever been in a temple before? And if they say yes, you say, which temple? And then, you have to call that temple and say, do you know this person? And they say, yeah, we know him. He's a thief. Don't let him in your temple. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. Why? Because, devotees are very anxious to get new devotees. But you have to carefully analyze the person that's claiming that they want to be a devotee and test them to see if they're actually real or fake. But if you just let them in the temple the first day, it's very risky, Okay, so there was this one man who entered the temple, and he was a thief. But he also wanted to be a devotee. But his penchant for being a thief overwhelmed him. And one night he took things that belonged to one person and mixed them up with things that belonged to another person in the temple. So when the devotees woke up, they saw that, wait a minute, it's not these are not my clothing here. Another person would say, and this is not my clothing either. So after a little investigation, we found out that this person had scrambled all the clothing of the devotees. And we asked him, why did you do it? He said, well, actually, I'm a thief. So I can't help myself sometimes. But I didn't want to really steal the clothing of the devotees, so I just mixed them all up. There's all kinds of people in this world. Okay, so are there any questions about this verse 30? There's some good words.
Yeah, it's very good verse, Guru Maharaj, but a lot of time I think it's practical experience.
Yes. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Okay.
We never thought about the sleep is a function of intelligence, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. And also memory, I was thinking part of the mind, and this is the first time it is came across that memory is also a function of intelligence.
Yes.
I
Memory.
was thinking the part of function of mind.
But that's why the memory, because we have to study the scriptures so that we feed the decision gets made based on the knowledge,
Yeah.
So that there is another thing, the doubt. I was just asking our friend ChatGPT about the doubting Thomas.
Yes.
And then it said the role of, this is the Christian thing, role of doubt in faith. Thomas's doubt is not condemned, but addressed by Jesus, showing that the questioning can be a step towards deeper understanding and stronger faith.
So he didn't only question. He wanted Jesus to let him stick his finger into his wound. See, so he was pierced by a spear, and you could see the wound that he had.
Oh,
And
that's probably because if we hear the story now, people will have doubts about Jesus, and just like Krishna had to give Arjuna the divine eyes to see, and so basically it's like people like us who are hearing now. So that's why they probably had the doubting Thomas as a way to, kind of address the doubtful minds of the people that, hey, there was also a doubtful person at that time. But he, eventually accepted Jesus as the Lord after seeing him. So is that a valid possibility that they've actually, documented?
Let's look that up. I think Jesus said something after Thomas stuck his finger in his wound.
I don't think
Yeah.
I don't know that he actually stuck his finger. Basically, I think this is what happened.
No,
But
no,
he invited him.
no, he did.
He did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway, look it up.
So at least in this one, the biblical context, it says Thomas, also known as Didymus or something like that, was not present when Jesus first appeared to other disciples after his resurrection. He declared, "Unless I see the nail marks on in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Later, when Jesus appeared and invited Thomas to do just that, overwhelmed, Thomas responded, "Oh, my Lord, my God." And Jesus replied, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." So, so this is
Well, yeah, but actually, I'm almost
okay.
sure Thomas did stick his finger into the wound.
I'll just ask for that.
But Jesus' statement is very profound. I mean, blessed are those who, what did he say?
Who have not seen and yet
And
believed.
believe.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm almost sure Thomas did stick his fingers into the wound.
Yeah, you're right. According to Gospel of John, Thomas did indeed touch Jesus' wounds.
Yeah.
Jesus invites Thomas to put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out to your hand and put into my side. This occurs after Thomas expresses doubt about the resurrection, saying he would not believe unless he could see and touch the wounds of Jesus himself. The invitation to touch the wounds serves as a direct response to Thomas's skepticism and as an important part of the narrative, highlighting the importance of faith and physical evidence of Jesus' resurrection.
But Jesus' statement is very profound. It's better those who have not seen but believe.
Mhm.
You know, I never actually saw Jesus, but I believe in the Son of God by the testimony of others who were living in his time and who did see him. Yeah, just like, you know, has anybody seen Lord Chaitanya? Anybody living today? Well, we see pictures of him, but we actually might even see a statue of him. We haven't actually seen him in the you know, walking around and talking and things like that. But we actually believe that he existed and that he bona fide the incarnation of the Lord. So how does that develop? Well, it develops in the association with devotees. And there's a lot of proof that Jesus actually, and not Jesus, but Lord Chaitanya actually existed. Uh, he was a historical character. He was not a fictional character. You can visit the place where he was born. You can see the chappals that he wore. And so many things are there to validate that he existed. And the best validation is that you follow his instructions, you actually become purified. You actually become a genuine devotee for following his instructions. So there are many different validations that you can get that actually there was someone named Lord Chaitanya who existed 5,000 years ago and who had different pastimes and was a bona fide incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. The other questions, a lot of nice phrases or words in this purport. It says, as described in the Patanjali Yoga system, pramana viparya vikalpa nitra smritya. By intelligence only, one can understand things as they are. By intelligence only can one understand whether or not he is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubt. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification of the body is detected. This is vipariyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described here as nischaya, or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body, but spirit soul. These are all profound statements, especially when it says, this experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. Yeah, if you don't know what's false, and you could accept something false to be true. So it's not enough to know the truth, you also have to know what is false. Otherwise, you can be tricked to accept something false. This is real philosophy. All this is philosophy. And the statement, the experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body, but spirit, soul. So we have examples of masses of people who have been tricked by a good speaker. Like, for example, Hitler. He's a very good speaker. Emotive. He could work the crowd. That's a statement. Work the crowd. And he was able to convince people that, Jews are the real problems, are the real cause of problems in life. And they should be killed. And the people that believed it, they did kill Jews. But eventually, they were completely decimated.
Did Hitler follow a religion, Guru Maharaj? They are like more atheistic over these.
No, the Nazis were not religious.
Hmm.
They were not religious at all.
What is their propaganda? Is it atheistic humanism?
Their philosophy was the Nazi philosophy, that is that there is a super race, yeah, the Übermensch, in the German language, Übermensch. And they were trying to build up a super race of men. So when they actually had power, they collected all people with the physical deformations and killed them. Or at least they neutered such people so they couldn't have sex and create other, let's say, deformed children. But oftentimes they killed them. They did things like that. They do a lot of experimentation in, what's the word? Well, they did a lot of experimentation on human beings to create a superior race of people. And part of that experimentation was to eliminate people who they thought did not have the attributes of a super person.
Did they kill even Germans who are not?
They killed gypsies, they killed communists, they killed all kinds of different people who they identified as not being Aryan people. They used that word. By the way, Hitler did not have the characteristics of an Aryan.
Yeah.
He was not real tall, blue eyes, blonde hair.
That is him.
There he is. Talking. Influencing thousands of people at one time.
Yeah.
To actually go kill people. So that's like, wow.
He was a very, very convincing speaker.
Lot of
Very emotional.
lot of convictions with which he was radiating. Maharaj, people are also like so ignorant, they just believe whatever someone is saying.
Well, you have different kinds of people who are very persuasive. You have
Guru.
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 Very persuasive. He has a different style than Hitler, of course,
Yeah.
but he has a smooth style.
It was very slow and
Yeah.
so Sadhguru on Krishna, he gave a talk about like who Krishna is.
Oh, really? Okay.
Do you want me to play that, Maharaj? He's-
Sure. You're not- When he
So-
came out, right in the beginning, he came out and said, I don't read any Shastras.
He says that, but then this is where so this is he makes Krishna a human.
Considered as a complete avatara or a complete incarnation of God. The consciousness that we refer to as Krishna, if we have to be touched by this, we need Leela.
He laughed.
Leela does not mean just dancing with somebody. You're willing to dance with death. You're willing to dance with life. Very few human beings ever get to be placed in as complex situations as Krishna was placed. In one human being's life, going through the variety of situations that he went through is generally, it doesn't happen to most human beings. And in all these situations that he was faced with,
Krishna was an
the
ordinary
clarity
human.
of vision that he exhibited and the certainty about his ability to discern as to what is true and what is not true, the clarity that he brought to people around him, people began to experiencing like godlike. So he was proclaimed as an incarnation and a complete incarnation. For those of you who are not familiar with this, they talk about 9 incarnations.
So now he goes about
I want you to
describing all the
understand this
incarnations.
is
And
what
then he
I'm going to
connects
say
to
now is
Darwin.
much before Charles Darwin came. So the first incarnation was Matsyavatara. That means God appeared in the form of a fish. And you know, Charles Darwin went about proving the first form of life on the planet were water life, fish. And the next incarnation is Kurmavatara.
But
That means it's a turtle.
he's
It's
trying
an
to,
amphibious animal.
his pitch is to attract all the scientists and everybody like, yeah, the mainstream. He wants his clientele to be mainstream.
Right.
So,
That's what happening also.
huh?
He's actually being successful that way also.
Yeah, that's lots of people think that, he's making sense.
Yeah, then a lot of people are believing that, okay, and then they should never, there's no friction between scientist and
Science and spirituality.
spirituality.
Yeah.
Because he's preaching that way.
Yeah, but the thing is, like you'll hear that he talks about the Vamana is the first human evolution.
Uh,
But we know that in the Vamana story, Lord Vamana is the only one who is dwarf. Everybody else
everybody
is.
else is,
So how is that possible then?
Is the only one that's what?
That is dwarf, right, Maharaj? In
A
that,
dwarf.
yeah. But all others, like
Yeah,
the
yeah, meaning-
Bali Chakravarti, yeah, exactly, yeah. So he uses all these things to just connect loosely and then make it as if like, oh, what Charles Darwin is saying, what science is saying. And basically his point is that I'm also God, you're just not realizing it. That's what he wants to prove, basically.
Yeah. I'm exhibiting the same qualities as Krishna exhibiting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Nityananda, he began preaching. He said, I have not come to tell you. I have come to tell you.
You are God, yes.
He was a very clever guy.
So in fact, that's why he doesn't read Shastras, because in Bhagavatam, clearly it describes how Lord Krishna appeared.
Yeah.
He appeared in his four-handed
Well, he doesn't
form.
want anybody to read the Shastra.
Yeah, he doesn't want. He wants to
Make it up.
like a human thing, and then he doesn't want to be corrected,
Right.
like
Or vetted.
vetted.
In marketing strategy.
In other words, he starts by throwing away all the Vedic
Literature, scriptures. Yeah.
Now you have to believe what he says.
Yeah.
Very clever strategy. But see, anyone that has not knowledge will accept anything as knowledge. So you have to be educated before you make decisions. Otherwise, you can accept anything that seems to be truthful or the truth and be duped your whole life. There are people even today that believe in Nityananda, they believe it's incarnation of God. They send him money, even though he's hiding out on some islands off the shores of the Ecuador in South America. Why is he hiding? Right? Krishna didn't hide himself.
So there is one question here, Maharaj, by Manish Prabhu. Krishna Maharaj, someone who had a serious fall down, like say child molestation offense, but he has accepted his mistake and through the system back being a top devotee and again giving Bhagavatam classes and also becoming a guru. Should we listen to such classes?
Absolutely not.
Hmm.
If one engaged in child molestation, they can never overcome that tendency. They can, come and hear lectures, they can take prasadam, but they cannot have a position of authority because that habit or that, let's say, that tendency of wanting to have sex with a child is so powerful that it can almost never be stopped.
How they will overcome this tendency, like it's just difficult, but is there any like way for them in this lifetime they can overcome?
Impossible.
It's as for the Bhagavatam, that chapters, right? Exas, we went through the different descriptions of people, demons. They fall in that category.
Yeah, anyone who would molest a child, it's almost impossible for them to stop.
Even though they are strictly following Krishna consciousness, still it's like difficult for them to overcome that tendency.
Yeah, it's almost impossible for them to not continue to do that. You know how evil that is? I mean, it's huge level of evil. So, you know, when you engage in illicit sex, it's very hard to stop that, right? But there are different levels. So when someone engages in molesting a child, it's almost impossible for them to ever stop doing that. Because they have complete control of the child. Someone can take advantage of a woman, right? And control her and you know, have you know, child woman, you know, can, you know, sort of protect herself somewhat, right? The child is no way. So, and that's what these real, let's say, top demons, they want to completely control the child and completely destroy the ability of the child to understand what's right and wrong, so they can continually, you know, what you call, take advantage of the child's life. That's why you have people that kidnap children, and they teach them to be raped on a regular basis. And then those children, when they grow up, they rape other children. This is what happened in ISKCON also. There were some people, some men that became devotees and were in the Gurukula, right? And then they trained some children that, first of all, they molested some children. And then the children started molesting other children. Right, this happened in ISKCON. So it's a disease that, because, you know, when you molest someone, you have complete control of that person. That power, that high level of, let's say, torture, it becomes a disease for some people, and they can't stop. That's why, you know, child molesters should be killed. You can't really rehabilitate a child molester. They should be killed in public, hang them in public, so people see what happens if you're a child molester. Because you actually ruin the whole life of the child. The child can never forget what happened to them. And then they can also take up molesting. So it basically ruins the life of the child. But if you get caught being a child molester, you're not killed. You're not killed. And you can eventually do some jail time and get out. They should immediately kill child molesters for their own good, so they don't do it again in this lifetime. So they get purified by being killed. Yeah, there have been people, but there was this one woman who killed people. So she was put into jail. But in jail, she became a Christian. And then she started converting other people in the jail to become Christians. Then the Christians started championing her as a good person. And they were trying to get her out of jail, although she killed a whole family, murdered them horribly. But the Christians were trying to convince the jailers that she should be let loose because she had rehabilitated now, accepted Jesus, and was converting so many other people in jail into, being Christians. The jailer said, "Well, you can ask, but it's not going to happen." This lady, she was so brutal, killing people. But the Christians tried to make the point that she's rehabilitated now and she's become a Christian. And look, she's convinced so many people in jail to become Christian. So you should let her out. And the jailer said, "No way. She can be a Christian in jail. That's fine. Stop. She's not going to get out of jail." There's always these, people who champion a very nasty person because it seems as if they have changed their ways and they've become a Christian, and they're convincing others to become Christians in jail and so forth. But the level of nastiness of the way they killed people, it can never be forgotten. And it's not fair to the relatives of the persons that were killed. Just because the person has become a Christian and now is convincing other criminals to become Christians, that doesn't stop, it doesn't change what this person did and the degree of nastiness by which they did it. So these are hard questions. But you kill people and torture them before you kill them like that, they should never let you out of jail, because that tendency to do things like that means that they have a very sick consciousness and never really be rehabilitated. That is the best thing. But to declare that, oh no, now they're rehabilitated, you should let them out of jail, that's big nonsense. You should never get out of too dangerous. Okay, so let's stop right there. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
So I want to just follow up on it, question on the same. So whoever is molesting women, they are also same category, or they can be corrected by Krishna consciousness. Like child is like very severe, but about the women, which category they belong, like they can be corrected. Or
Well, it's like the wolf that dresses like a lamb. It's because they get a, lamb's not body, but lamb's
Outfit.
dress.
yeah, and they wear like a false identification as a lamb. It doesn't mean they've changed. It's still a wolf in the clothing of the lamb. So we shouldn't trust people like that. It's very hard for them to give up that tendency of controlling someone and exploiting them completely and ruining their life. Whenever someone has been molested, it's very hard for them to readjust to their conscience. Very. That's why molesters should be killed, especially child molesters. They should not be given a chance to rehabilitate. Their rehabilitation should be killed. To be very quickly killed and And that's the way to be rehabilitated, to have another chance to become a human being. But to just, let them stay in jail for 20 years and then let them loose again, ooh, it's very dangerous. And actually, it's much better to kill them because then they have a chance of becoming purified. I'm like a butcher, kill them. But anybody who commits child molestation should be killed. It's almost impossible for them to give up that type of consciousness. But what they do is, by child molester can ruin the life of a child forever. So our it ruins the life of the child. Very difficult to function normally after being molested seriously. And this happened in ISKCON. One day I was doing devotional service in the temple with a devotee. And we had to stay up most of the night, cooking. He was helping me. And then little by little, he revealed to me that he had been a child molested in ISKCON. I was shocked, and he explained a little bit about what happened. It's horrible. But he has sort of forgiven the people that molested him, or the people that permitted others to molest him. And, I realized that this person is like a saint, forgiving these people that tried to ruin his whole life. But it's something that the person can never forget. They might, forgive their molesters, the people that harmed them, but it's hard for them to forget what's happened to them. That's why they should never have sleepover, let's say, they should never have kids that are sleeping in the ashram. They're 5 years old, 10 years old, whatever. It's too dangerous. Too many corrupt people in this world. You can only have, daytime school for kids, not sleepovers. Under the protection of pederast. Pederast is a child molester. You never know. What they do is they know how to groom kids, and eventually they molest them, and then they say, don't say anything. Kid doesn't say anything until they grow up 20 years later, or 10 years later. But by that time, that person could be somewhere else, doing the same thing in a different country. They're very clever, these type of molesters. And they like ISKCON because ISKCON you can join very easily. And oftentimes you're not vetted carefully. Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Vetting is so important.
You never let a person sleep in the temple until they're very carefully vetted. One time this guy came and he wanted to sleep in the temple and be a devotee. So I asked him, well, what did you do in the last 10 years? He said, well, I was in jail for 8, 9 years. Oh, I said, really? What did you do to go to jail? And he said, I molested the children. So, you can't stand. So I told him you can't stand the temple. Because we have kids in the temple. Right? How can you let a person like that in the temple that looks like a normal devotee or a normal person. That's like letting the fox into the chicken coop. Okay, all grace to Shiva Prabhupada.